In a world where every purchase matters, discover Packed with Purpose, where gifting meets social impact. Imagine sending a gift that not only delights the recipient, but also changes lives. That's the magic of Packed with Purpose. They curate extraordinary gift boxes filled with products from purpose-driven companies across the United States. Each item in their gift boxes tells a unique story. Gourmet treats supporting job creation from the unemployed, eco-friendly office supplies promoting sustainability, artisanal crafts empowering underserved communities, and wellness products funding health initiatives. Whether it's for corporate gifting, client appreciation, or personal celebrations, Packed with Purpose offers a meaningful alternative to traditional gifts. Their expert team ensures that each box is tailored to your needs and your budget. Ready to make your gifts truly impactful? For our listeners today, we have a special offer. Using promo code DARK10, all lowercase, when you place your order, you will get $10 off your first purchase with Packed with Purpose. Visit packedwithpurpose.com today and start gifting with intention. Remember, use code DARK10 for your 10% off on your first order. Packed with Purpose, because every gift should make a difference. Welcome to Dark Crossroads Podcast, hosted by Roxanne Fletcher. This is your stop for all things true crime and paranormal. From the infamous story of the New Bedford highway killer to the chilling tale of the black-eyed children, Dark Crossroads Podcast is a truly deep dive into the stories that frighten and fascinate you. All links to the show will be provided in this episode's description. And don't forget to let us know what you think of today's episode. Before we dive into today's episode, I need to give out a trigger warning. Today's episode will contain descriptions of extreme violence, criminal behavior, and psychological trauma. What you're about to hear is a true story, but it is not an easy one. If you are sensitive to such content, you might want to skip this episode. Imagine that you're at a Little League baseball game in suburban New Jersey. It is 1975, and there's this big guy cheering from the bleachers. He's wearing a polo shirt and khakis, holding a video camera to record his kid's game. The other parents know him. It's Richard, the currency trader from down the block. He's a great family man, and he always has time to help a neighbor fix their car or throw a few extra hamburgers on the grill for the neighborhood kids. Now, imagine that just 12 hours earlier, that same man was in a warehouse in Brooklyn, methodically dismembering a body and preparing to dissolve it in acid. The same hands that just clapped for a Little League home run were half of a day ago ending somebody's life with mechanical precision. Today we are going to be bringing you probably one of our hardest episodes yet, the complete story of Richard Kuklinski, known to law enforcement and crime historians as the Iceman. And trust me, by the end of this episode, you'll never look at your neighbors quite the same way again. Let's start with a number, 6'5". That's how tall Richard was. He was 6'5" and 300 pounds of imposing mass. A giant of a man who could have easily been a bouncer or a professional wrestler. Instead, he chose a different career path. One that would make him one of the most prolific contract killers in American history. A police officer at the time made a statement saying that in their 30 years of law enforcement, they had never encountered anybody quite like Kuklinski. The sheer scale of his crimes, the methodical nature, it was unprecedented.
As a matter of fact, when it happened, it surprised me. I expected the man to die, but it really surprised me when it took his head off.
But to understand this monster, we first need to understand where he came from. This is where our story takes its first dark turn. Jersey City in 1935. The Great Depression is still grinding America's working class into dust. In a small, cramped apartment Anna McNally Kuklinski, a deeply religious woman of Irish Catholic descent, gives birth to her second son, Richard. His father, Stanley, is a Polish immigrant who works as a brakeman on the Lackawanna. His father, Stanley, is a Polish immigrant who works as a brakeman on the railroad when he wasn't drinking away his paycheck. Now, we often hear about killers having troubled childhoods, but what Richard Kuklinski experienced goes beyond troubled. It was pure horror. Kuklinski, in an interview, would state, "My father, he loved to beat children. That was his favorite thing. He beat my mother, he beat my brother, and he would beat me. And sometimes I didn't even know why he was beating me. He just seemed to like to do it." Let me paint you a picture of a young Richard's daily life. He would wake up hungry. There was rarely enough food. His father might be passed out drunk, or he might be in one of his rages. His mother, rather than protecting her children, believed that physical punishment was God's will. She regularly beat Richard with broom handles until they would break. But the true horror of Richard's childhood centers around a tragedy that would haunt him forever. In 1942, his older brother died from injuries inflicted by their father. The official cause of death was falling down the stairs. At the time, Richard was 7 years old. In later interviews, Richard would reveal something that I think captures the essence of his bringing. Richard would reveal something that I think captures the essence of his upbringing. He would state, "I never felt wanted. I never felt loved. How do you love something that you don't even know exists?" But Richard had another brother, Joseph, and this is where our story takes an even darker turn, because Joseph would grow up to be convicted of raping and murdering a 12-year-old girl. Maybe nature versus nurture. In the Kuklinski household, both were working overtime to create monsters. Young Richard started showing signs of violence early. By age 10, he was killing neighborhood cats, a common precursor to more serious violence. But what set him apart was his capacity for human violence at an incredibly young age. According to a criminal psychologist, what's remarkable about Richard is how early he started. Most killers have a progression. He went straight to murder. At the age of 13, Richard committed his first murder. The victim was Charlie Lane, a local bully who led a gang that had been tormenting him. Using a wooden dowel, Richard beat him to death. He would later say that he felt no remorse, only a surge of power that he had never experienced before. Now here's something chilling. After his first kill, Richard didn't hide, and he did not run. He went home, and he had dinner with his family. Nobody ever connected him to Charlie's death. This ability to compartmentalize, to commit violence, and then return to normal life as if nothing had happened would become his trademark. By his teen years, Kuklinski was working for the local mob, running errands and doing small jobs. He was also developing his own criminal enterprise, starting with robbery and then moving into enforcement work. But his real break into the world of professional killing came through, of all things, pornography. The 1960s found Richard working at a film lab in New Jersey, copying pornographic films for a local crime family. This was the same family that would later inspire The Sopranos. This job would lead to a pivotal moment in his criminal career. One day, a customer complained about the quality of the copies. What was Richard's response? He murdered him. Just like that. No escalation, no argument, just business. A former associate to the crime family that he was working for stated, "Word got around quick. There was this big guy who could kill without blinking. No emotion, no hesitation. That is valuable in our line of work." This caught the attention of Roy DeMeo, a notorious member of the Gambino crime family. DeMeo decided to test Kuklinski's abilities. He would randomly point out people on the street and order Richard to kill them. These were not planned hits, they were auditions. And this is where we see Richard develop his signature versatility. He did not just shoot people, though he was proficient with every type of firearm. He strangled, stabbed, bludgeoned, and even poisoned. He would run people over with his car or push them in front of trains. Each kill was different, making it impossible for law enforcement to connect the dots.
Put it in liquid form. Person could say, for instance, a person could be in a bar. You bunk into the possibly by mistake, or say you were intoxicated, spill the drink on them, and leave. Everybody just looks around and thinks you were drunk or that you just had an accident or something, and meanwhile, it's soaking through their clothes, into their pores, and into their system. And eventually, they'll die.
In another clip, he stated, "I used cyanide a lot. Spray it in their face, mix it in their drinks. They'd be dead before they hit the ground. Nice and clean." Now we come to what I consider the most fascinating aspect of Richard's story, his family life. Because while he was out committing these brutal murders, he was also maintaining what appeared to be a picture-perfect suburban existence. In 1961, Richard met Barbara at a diner where she worked. She was 18 and he was 26. By all accounts, it was love at first sight, at least for Barbara. They would end up getting married within a year of meeting each other. Barbara went on to state, "He was different with me. He was gentle. He would bring me flowers, write me little notes. I thought I knew him." Barbara had no idea what her husband did for a living. He told her that he was in currency exchange, later adding that he was also in wholesale merchandise. The money was good. The money was very good. They moved to a nice house in Dumont, New Jersey. They had 3 children, Merrick, Christian, and Dwayne. Now, here's where things get really interesting. By all accounts, Richard was an attentive, loving father. He never missed a school event. He helped with homework. He took the family on vacations to Disney World. He would cry watching sad movies with his children. His son went on to state, "He was just dad to us. He taught me to ride a bike. He helped me with my math homework." How do you reconcile that with what we know now? Barbara and the children would walk on eggshells around his explosive temper. He never physically abused them. He was adamant about that, but the threat of violence was always present. This brings us to Richard's most infamous method, the one that earned him the nickname the Iceman. He had acquired an industrial-sized freezer, which he kept in a storage unit. After killing his victims, he would freeze their bodies, sometimes for years, before disposing of them. A common question to this is why? Because frozen bodies throw off time of death estimates. A body found in summer might have been killed in the winter. A victim discovered in New Jersey might have been killed in New York. It was brilliant in its simplicity, and it kept investigators chasing shadows for years. Many would go on to say that the freezer was genius. How do you solve a murder when you can't even pin down when it happened? Think about this. While bodies were literally on ice waiting to be disposed of, Richard was attending parent-teacher conferences. While he was planning his next hit, he was helping his kids with science projects. The compartmentalization is staggering. By the mid-1980s, Richard was making up to $40,000 per hit. He bought a Cadillac, took luxury vacations, gave his kids everything they wanted, but success bred carelessness. He started taking independent contracts outside the mob, made enemies, talked too much to the wrong people, and in 1985, law enforcement finally got the break that they needed. Enter Dominic, an undercover ATF agent. Using an alias, he spent 18 months infiltrating Richard's world. The recordings he made are chilling in their casualness.
The more you looked for connections, the less you found in this particular case, because there was different types of murders, different devices used. The final method that was used was, in fact, the introduction of a undercover federal agent, Dominic Polifrone, who was able to win Mr. Kuklinski's confidence and was able to record conversations where he detailed his participation in these murders.
I portrayed myself as a hitman. Told him I worked for the wise guys downtown New York, and my brother was a good fella downtown, and I went by the name of Dominic Michael Provenzano.
You willing to go out on a contract? If the price is right, I'll talk to anybody. Yeah? Sure.
And you mean to tell me your way is nice and clean and nothing fucking shows up?
Well, it may show, my friend, but it's quiet. It's not messy. It's not noisy. It's not,
Yeah, but how the fuck do you put it together, like, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, there's always a way. There's a will, there's a way, my friend.
We used to sit down, we'd talk. Either we'd go to those tables over there and get away from people, and we discuss. how to murder people.
I just have a few problems I want to dispose of. I have some rats I want to get rid of. Yeah. The only fucking thing I don't understand, don't you use a fucking piece of iron to get rid of these fucking people? Use this fucking cyanide? Why be messy? You do it nice and calm.
It became apparent at later points in the investigation that Mr. Kuklinski fully intended on murdering Dominic Polifrone, in addition to the victims that were being discussed at the time they were having these tape-recorded conversations. So he could pretty much tell Dominic Polifrone anything, because he knew shortly that he had plans for Mr. Polifrone too.
You put that stuff in a mist, you spray it in somebody's face, and they go to sleep. No shit. As long as he's dead, that's the bottom line. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? No matter how it was done, I mean, I know guys that went to sleep and never woke up again. I mean, you know.
He says he had one guy, he went and get a hamburger, they come back and he put the cyanide on his hamburger. And we're sitting down and he's telling me, he says, you wouldn't believe it. He says, I'm waiting for this guy to keel over. He says, because once you eat cyanide, usually you'd roll over and that's it. He says, this guy had the constitution of a fucking bull. He says, you wouldn't believe it. He says he wouldn't die. And we're both laughing about this. And I'm saying in the back of my mind, I said, holy God. I said, look at this. I said, what kind of person is this? I said to myself right there, I said, you better cover your butt. I said, because you just don't know with this guy. And he'd be kidding about it, and I'd be laughing. In the back of my mind, I'm saying, this is the devil. No question about it, this is the devil.
December 17th of 1986, Dominic arranged a final meeting. Richard thought he was picking up a cocaine sample that had been laced with cyanide, his preferred poison. Instead, he found himself surrounded by federal agents and state police. The arrest shocked the community. Barbara and the children were devastated. Imagine finding out that your entire life, your marriage, your family memories were built on a foundation of lies and murder. During his trial, details emerged that stunned even hardened law enforcement officers. The number of victims, the various methods, the absolute lack of remorse.
Nothing haunts me. No murders haunt me. Nothing. I don't think about it. That's why it's hard for me to tell you. But in order for me to be able to tell you when something happened, I'd have to think about when. If I think about it, it would wind up hurting me. So I don't think about it.
Richard was eventually convicted of 5 murders, though he would later claim to have killed over 100 people. In prison, Richard gave several remarkable interviews, most famously for HBO's documentaries. He showed zero remorse for his victims, but would break down crying when talking about his own family. He would go on to say, I do regret hurting my family. That's the only thing I regret. The rest, it was just business. Richard would go on to die in 2006 at the age of 70 years old in Trenton State Prison. The official cause of death was cardiac arrest, though rumors have persisted that he was poisoned. A fitting end for a man who had used poison on so many others. So what do we make of Richard Kuklinski? Was he a sociopath who simply played the role as family man? Or was he something more complex, a compartmentalized personality who can genuinely love his family while feeling nothing for his victims? Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the Iceman's story is not the number of victims or even his methods. It's that he shows us how easily evil can hide in plain sight. The monster isn't always the stranger in the shadows. Sometimes it's the neighbor who helps you jumpstart your car. Sometimes it's the dad cheering at the Little League game. The questions that his story raises are profoundly uncomfortable ones. How well do we really know anybody? What capacity for darkness might lie behind the most ordinary facade? And perhaps most disturbingly, how many other Richard Kuklinskis might be out there right now, living their double lives, waiting for their masks to slip? If you want to learn more about the Iceman case, I highly recommend watching the HBO documentaries where Richard Kuklinski tells his own story. Just be warned, his casualness about murder is deeply disturbing. This episode was written and researched by Roxanne. Our theme song is produced by Soul Prod Music, and a special thanks to the New Jersey State Police Archives for providing access to case files and recordings. Alrighty, so it's that time, guys, to say goodbye. But before I do so, I just want to send a thank you to all of my listeners for your continued love and support and for sending in cases that you want covered and stories that you want read on the podcast. We truly accept all stories, including scary, paranormal, and funny. Any cases you want covered or stories that you want read on the podcast, just please send them in to darkcrossroadspodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for hanging out again today. You can also find us on all social media platforms. Don't forget to like, share, rate, review, subscribe wherever you're listening to us. You can subscribe to the podcast for bonus information. There is a link in all episodes in the notes that will send you to our subscription page, and with that you will get bonus content, discount on future merch, and a lot of extra goodies. Every single dollar that comes through donations or through our subscription goes straight into the podcast, helping fund research, and it really helps us out and keeps this podcast going. And with all of this said, please don't forget to be weird, stay different, and don't trust anyone. Are you a science enthusiast? Someone who loves to tinker? Or are you just a lifelong learner? Get ready to embark on a journey of discovery with the Curiosity Box. The Curiosity Box is not just a subscription service. It is your ticket to a world of wonder delivered right to your doorstep. Every quarter, they pack a box full of mind-blowing science experiments, brain-teasing puzzles, and exclusive collectibles that will ignite your imagination. Conduct real experiments that dazzle and educate. Assemble gadgets that challenge your problem-solving skills. Explore scientific concepts through hands-on activities, and collect unique items that celebrate the joy of discovery. Whether you are 8 years old or 80 years old, the Curiosity Box brings out the scientists in all of us. It is perfect for family bonding, classroom enrichment, or solo exploration. Each box is carefully curated by a team of scientists and educators to ensure hours of engaging educational fun. Ready to unleash your inner scientist? Subscribe now and you will get an out-of-this-world offer just for our listeners. Using promo code DARK when you sign up, you will receive a free Lightyear bottle for your first box. Visit the Curiosity Box today and start your journey into the extraordinary. Remember to use code DARK to receive your free Lightyear bottle. The Curiosity Box, where curiosity leads to discovery.